Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. Jimmy Kimmel has just been pulled off the air on ABC for suggesting basically that the shooter of Charlie Kirk was MAGA, and how people allegedly on the right have been trying to convince the world with their rhetoric and their words that the young man was somehow a leftist radical, when in fact his family, the young man, Tyler Robinson's family, is MAGA, and they admitted it. And like I said, once again, Jimmy Kimmel has now been pulled off the air. Is this the end of ABC for bowing? Or is this the beginning of the end of freedom of speech, ladies and gentlemen? Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, click on the thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be the little bell notification right below this video, ladies and gentlemen. Share this video. Share this video. Very important. Ladies and gentlemen, just a few minutes ago or in the last hour, right now, because of the 3-hour difference, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Kimmel would be filming his show that would be airing tonight. That's why they call it Jimmy Kimmel Live. Ladies and gentlemen, they pulled Jimmy Kimmel show off the air indefinitely, based on the fact that Jimmy Kimmel said something in reference to Tyler Robinson and how the people on the right, or should I say Republicans, mostly Republicans, have been basically trying to convince everybody that Tyler Robinson was a leftist Democrat and somehow he was radicalized. Ladies and gentlemen, there could be nothing further from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to understand this. So now, the truth and the facts are under fire. Once again, one can have an opinion about something, right? And like I said, you know, there are FEC rules and all of those things. But what Jimmy Kimmel said wasn't anything bad. He gave his opinion like everybody else has been giving their opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, I did a show or episode here on Straight Game TV where we talked about some of the things that Charlie Kirk had said in reference to African Americans, in reference to Martin Luther King, in reference to Ketanji Brown Jackson, who else was it? Michelle Obama, and all of these people. Like I said, once again, and it seems to be a hypocritical double standard when we're dealing with the freedom of speech. My question is ABC also done? Because when you bow down like that, will people go to Disneyland? Will people watch the next Black Panther movie or anything that they are coming out with? This is the question, because like I said, once again, you know, it's one thing to be able to, like I said, and Charlie Kirk, he shouldn't have been killed. Like I said, unfortunate. You know, we're talking about on side of politics, man. Because when you start acting as if someone is standing up for somebody from that perspective, it was just a young African-American male down in Mississippi found hung, ladies and gentlemen, and you ain't heard nothing about it. You ain't heard nothing about it, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, they want the rest of Americans to be ultimately hurt by what Charlie Kirk was doing and Charlie Kirk was saying. Like I said once again yesterday, when I and I'm going to rehash this because it's very important, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to understand this. Montel Williams went on CNN, and Montel Williams the former talk show host, he got it right. Montel Williams got it right. He got it right. He was the only person that I saw that actually went on television and actually got it right. Montel Williams said, and it was the same thing that I alluded to yesterday when I went live. The young man, Tyler Robinson, is in a albeit a gay relationship with his roommate, right? And Charlie Kirk went out there and he said a lot of things against the LGBT community, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, this is nothing but facts. Y'all know I do straight game. It doesn't matter, like, as far as what people are saying and trying to convey to you and make you believe and put you under pressure, you know, because when you broke, hungry, and ain't got no money and things start to go, you know, downhill, people don't care about none of this other stuff that they're talking about. Once again, like I said, you have to understand this. Watch this, and I need you to pay attention to this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Kimmel has been pulled off the air for suggesting that the young man, Tyler Robinson, was MAGA, right? Unfortunately, other people have been going on these podcasts talking about how somehow, some way, you know, he was radicalized. It was the radical left. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lie. It's a lie. It's straight up a lie. You know what I mean? Barack Obama being a Muslim was a lie, ladies and gentlemen. Barack Obama not being a citizen of the United States and somehow in his birth certificate, all of those things were a lie. But we understand now what the dog whistles are. We get what the dog whistles are, especially in dealing with African Americans, right? Right? And so when you understand that, the young man Tyler Robinson, ladies and gentlemen, you got to understand what happened. So now I want you to understand this, because Montel Williams got it right. If you look at you know, let me scroll it up a little bit more so that you understand the context of what this is, right? When you look at, and I'm talking, these are the factual statements. People are always saying, "Oh man, it sound like and it looked like a script." This ain't no script. They released it because they needed to release it to, you know, convince the public of what that actually was, right? Tyler Robinson's grandmother went on television. Did an interview and talked about her grandson, right? And she said, quote, I don't know nobody who's a Democrat in my family. She basically said that everybody was Republican, right? You know, and they basically supported MAGA and all of these other things, right? Listen. So police interviewed Robinson's roommate, a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a personal conversation. This has nothing to do with politics right here. And you really see nothing that the young man, Tyler Robinson, says anything about politics. I want you to focus on what I'm about to do for you, because once again, this is his words. You don't need to listen to nobody else and how they're trying to convey what this man meant and what he said, right? The roommate told the police that the roommate received from Robinson about the shooting and provided those messages to the police. So Tyler Robinson's roommate / lover, right, provided these text messages from them back and forth. Listen, on September 10th, 2025, the roommate received text messages from Robinson which said, drop what you're doing. Look under my keyboard, to his computer. The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. What that lets me know is they had a conversation, right? Because when he says, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it, police found a photograph of this note. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, the following text exchange then took place. This is facts. This is not something that somebody, and as a matter of fact, this is going to be used in court, or try to be used in court, if you will. I'm sure the lawyer will try to put up some kind of motion to get these text messages dismissed. I don't think he'll be successful once they go through all the metadata and prove that this was actually a conversation between Tyler Robinson and his roommate. But check it out. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Now, we don't know whether that was in a, you're joking, right? In a surprise, or like, what? You really, did what they might have talked about in saying that. And I'm going to show you why. This is what Robinson says. It's not political, right? Robinson's first words to his roommate was, "I'm still okay, my love." That's not political. That's personal, right? In the personal relationship that they have. But listen, then Robinson goes in to say, "But I'm still stuck in Orem for a little while longer, yet shouldn't be long until I can come home," right? After doing what he felt like, to me, was defending the honor of his relationship with his lover, being the fact, and to all credibility to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk did not know Tyler Robinson, did not know Tyler Robinson was gay, did not know Tyler Robinson was involved in some kind of relationship like that, right? But the words, listen, the words that Charlie Kirk was speaking against the LGBTQ community were hurtful and hateful to Robinson, and he felt like he had to do something. And he explains that in the next paragraph. Listen, he said, "But I gotta grab my rifle still, right? To be honest, I had hoped to keep this a secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you." Now that would let you know what? He's saying, "I'm sorry to have involved you." I'm just giving you the context of what really is going on, despite people going on and just going on with this rhetoric. It was some leftist, it was this, that, and the other. Those are lies, ladies and gentlemen. Do not fall for the lies. Please think for yourself. Your freedom of speech as an American is under attack. Your freedom of speech as an American is under attack. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump went on TV and said I could kill somebody in the middle of the street in New York, and they still would vote for me. And he's found no problem with that, ladies and gentlemen. He found no problem with that, right? The January 6th situation, people lost their lives, ladies and gentlemen. And people they act like it didn't even happen, ladies and gentlemen. They were running for their lives. They were hiding down in the Capitol building and all of that with the senators and all of that. They had people running for the people. Police officers actually lost their life, ladies and gentlemen. And when Donald Trump got in office, he pardoned damn near all of those people that were involved. Right? So the hypocrisy is loud and clear. It's loud and clear, ladies and gentlemen. You got to understand that. But more importantly, let's go into what? Why did the roommate asked him, he said, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Robinson apologized. He said, "I am. I'm sorry." So he admits to doing it, right? "I thought they caught the person." He said, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down, right? It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering." Ladies and gentlemen, the young man is nonchalant enough that he just assassinated Charlie Kirk. He's calm, cool, collective, talking about trying to go pick up his rifle and do what he says to pick it up. But this is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, we need to stop letting people tell us what to think, how to think, because they say it enough, right? The roommate asked him why. And Robinson said, "Why did I do it?" And the roommate says, "Yeah." He said, "I had enough of his hatred." Some hate can't be negotiated, ladies and gentlemen. Out, right? Some hate can't be negotiated out. What hate is he talking about, y'all? Coming and finding out that, and like I said, to Charlie Kirk, like I said, he shouldn't have been killed point blank period. But they say freedom of speech, just watch what you say, right? And like I said, he shouldn't have been killed. But there are people out here, right? And Tyler Robinson, who comes from what? His grandmother say, everybody in my family's Republican, right? MAGA, the whole 9 yards. And so now, when he says, I had enough of his hatred, some hate can't be negotiated out. What hate for what? What is Tyler Robinson talking about when he talks about the hate? Hate for what? Was he talking about hate for black people? Was he talking about hate for immigrants? Was he talking about hate for what? He was talking about the hate that he felt because he, whether unbeknownst to his family or not, right, was a young man who was gay. And he participated and was involved in the LGBT community from that perspective, ladies and gentlemen. It says nothing about politics. It says nothing about a left wing. Montel Williams, ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. Montel, you see it right here. Look, right? After that, after he said that some hate can't be negotiated out, then he goes right back into, if I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Tyler Robinson ain't crazy. He says nothing else about politics, nothing else about I was radicalized. No, the only thing he talks about is says he had enough of the hatred. The hatred for what? You go back to the top part. The first thing he said, I'm still okay, my love. Talking to his gay lover, who was his roommate, right? That's his what he chooses to do, right? Okay, cool. So now you can understand the context of the letter, ladies and gentlemen. But now, Jimmy Kimmel has been taken off the air for suggesting that somehow the Republicans have been trying to convince everybody, right, through these talking points and things of that nature, that Tyler Robinson was somehow, some way, a leftist radical. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. You've seen the letter. And this is the very letter that they're going to be. And like I said, pretty soon we're going to hear from Tyler Robinson, ladies and gentlemen. And he's going to explain why he did what he did. Now that I guess the cat's out of the bag as far as his, sexual orientation and things like that. You know what I mean? I don't have no problem with that. Like I said, I really didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was. Like I said, in certain parts and certain elements of what was going on with Charlie, I never knew what then I became aware of some of the things that he said. And Vice President J.D. Vance came out the other day and basically said that Charlie Kirk didn't say the stuff that he said about black women. I was like, oh, wow, another lie. And you got to call it out for what it is, or you stupid if you don't. It was another lie. And then they played the clip of what Vice President J.D. Vance said, and then played the clip of Charlie Kirk actually saying what Vice President J.D. Vance said that he didn't say. So once again, see, it's one thing to be thought a fool. It's another thing to open your mouth and relieve all doubt. And then not only in that same practice, to be caught in a lie and saying it. That's crazy. That's crazy. To say that he didn't say it and there's video of him actually saying it. Now I could see if there wasn't video, they swept the internet of the videos and pulled everything off the internet. But he said it. He said that Michelle Obama, the politician, Sheila Lee, and Ketanji Jackson, and all of these people were DEI, ladies and gentlemen. Affirmative action, and they stole some other white person's position to become what they became. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't get in Harvard stealing nobody's position, right? If we were let in on our merits, let's deal with the NBA, because Charlie Kirk actually talked about the NBA, and he asked the question about, well, if the NBA started a thing where they started to say, 50% of all of the NBA has to be white. Would that be a problem? No, if they were good enough. You see, they have most of African Americans in the NBA because, once again, at one time, we weren't allowed to play. Point blank, period. Ask Tiger Woods. It was at one time we weren't allowed to play golf. Then we got in it, right? And Tiger Woods got in it and he dominated. Now it's still other players playing, black, white, whatever. Tiger Woods had his moment. Tiger Woods didn't take any other white person's spot. He was the top spot. It was everybody's job to participate and try to compete to be the best in what that was. Now, what did Tiger Woods say? Because since Tiger Woods is, I think, dealing with Trump's niece or something like that, right? Let's be clear. What did Tiger Woods say that the first thing he did when he used to go to golf courses, right? Because he knew how racist it was at the golf course. He said, no, I just want my shoes. I'm ready to go. And boom, boom, I don't need all the rest of that stuff. He understood that. So to sit back now and act like, oh, this DEI thing higher and what all of this, it's a game. It's manipulation. It's propaganda. Ladies and gentlemen, who invented the ice cream scoop? Who invented the stoplight? There's so many, there's a video of Donald Trump talking about the inventions and things that were invented here in America, right? Everything that he named was invented by a black person. Every last one of them. And then he said, we've invented everything. We've invented the internet. Who invented that? That was invented by African Americans, ladies and gentlemen. The very internet that I'm talking on right now was invented by black people. So we need to get this straight. Once again, the cornerstone of the White House, who was it built by? African Americans, slaves, right? So now we have this big thing. Jimmy Kimmel now has been taken off the air. Jimmy Kimmel's a comedian. He said a lot of crazy stuff over the years, made a lot of suggestions about certain things. And like I said, once again, so now what basically is being said is you can't say a certain thing. My thing is this, ABC took him off the air. So does ABC now have to worry about a boycott from regular people who say, hold on, ABC, right? It's like NWA. Remember when NWA made the song Fuck the Police? And they said that they got a letter from the FBI, right? The record label got a letter from the FBI. And once again, it made the NWA even more popular. Dr. Dre talked about it. Eazy-E talked about it. Because this is America, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about freedom of speech, right? And so when we understand that, you got to understand, like I said, once again, all Jimmy Kimmel said was, they going on the air trying to convince everybody that, this guy who, Tyler Robinson, wasn't MAGA, right? Once again, who are we to believe? You can't take somebody's death, formulate your own narrative, and say something other than what the people who really actually knew him said. What did Tyler Robinson's grandmother say? We're MAGA, right? We're Republican, and ain't nothing wrong with that. But don't try to make it like it's something else because the argument or the facts are not favorable to one's argument. It's disingenuous. You see what I'm saying? And so now, I like Jimmy Kimmel. I thought he's a funny guy. You know what I mean? Not because he had anything or talked about Donald Trump or anything. Who cares? Like I said, once again, at the end of the day, but when you think about the big picture of what's going on right now, people have been doxxed, losing their jobs, and all of this craziness, all because of the things that Charlie Kirk was saying about African Americans. You can't tell me that he had love for us. You can't tell me that he loved us, right? You can't. The things that he said, you say that black women don't have the, listen to me, this is an overall blanket statement, ladies and gentlemen, about some of our highest thinking individuals that we have in this country. Michelle Obama, Ketanji Brown Jackson, come on, are you kidding me? She's a Supreme Court justice. Whose spot did she take? Nobody. She worked for a law firm. Michelle Obama, by her own right, is a lawyer. Princeton, Harvard, point blank. Isn't it a fact? You can look it up. Isn't it a fact that Melania Trump plagiarized Michelle Obama's speech when Donald Trump got elected the first time? Man, that's a hell of a lot of brain power right there. That's a very admirable speech. We heard Michelle Obama. She's a hell of an orator, should I say, right? So now, understand what's going on, man. This ain't about, like I said, this ain't about, they found a young African-American man hanging in Mississippi just recently, y'all. I don't know if you know anything about that, but you need to check that out. Nobody's saying nothing. Nobody's saying nothing about it. Right? Ain't that what we went through going through Jim Crow? Didn't they hang us up and set us on fire and look at and laugh and point? Is that not what they did? Somebody talk to me. You know what I mean? So once again, we, especially as African, we not falling for the okie doke. We simply not falling for this ain't no left radical, none of that. We talking about us as a people. You know what I mean? Once again, you know, they love the culture. They love to dress like us and, you know, be like us and cool like us. And you know what I mean? They love the culture, the music, the hip hop, all of that and all of that, right? Now, all of a sudden, something happens and now everything is what? Nah. So now you got to look at it for what it really truly is. Jimmy Kimmel's off the air for just saying something. So now, if they can take somebody like Jimmy Kimmel off the air, right? Do you stand a chance with your job if you say something that somebody don't like and they feel like, oh, they're emboldened by this new form of racism? Right? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Once again, if you did not hear it, your own self, you can go listen to Charlie Kirk. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Kirk was a racist. Point blank, period. I'm not sugarcoating that. I know who I am. You know what I mean? And nobody, and once again, when he took on what he took on and started talking, and everywhere he went, it was like, how many black fathers are in the house? How many black, you know, this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And he said some things that were favorably right. But like I said, once again, there were a lot of things that he said that were racist. Point blank, period, y'all. Point blank, period. You know? And so, like I said, when, you know, blacks are lazy and all of these other things, right? These are old tropes. When we built the country, right? So once again, you know, talking about kids and free lunch and all of these other things, everybody doesn't have it like he has it. I understand that he was given a couple of $1 million to start up his organization. I wish we could all get a handout like that. I wish we could all get a little bit of help like that, but we can't. Everybody, I'm talking about white, black, blue, Asian, Latino, whoever you are. Like I said, if you're struggling, you're having a rough time, this is what it's about. It's about everybody, man. You know what I mean? Like I said, once again, they call it the left, the radical left. It's simply not that. Once again, all you got to do, I listened to the statements that Charlie Kirk made, ladies and gentlemen. I listened to it. It was a lot of dog whistles, right? He said that, what he said, that the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a mistake. How? People died. They hung us from trees, right? Emmett Till, the young man that was just found hanging in Mississippi, it was 50 miles away from where they found Emmett Till's body at, ladies and gentlemen. Ain't nobody talking about that. If you can't help me or make me feel guilty about somebody and they found a young black man who was going to college, right? Who was going to college to get an education and they found him hanging down there. You can't make me feel bad about somebody who was speaking against him, who was calling that very young man who was down there attending college in Mississippi, calling him a DEI. When you don't know him, when they're speaking from a perspective of their own, you can't speak for everybody else. I can't speak for all black people, right? And so when I listen to the situation and I listen to it overall, it's like, hey, man, hold on. You don't speak for you. Charlie Kirk wasn't qualified to speak on what black people do and how we do what we do. He wasn't qualified for that. He wasn't black. I can't speak on what white people do and what they do. I'm not white. I can speak on my experience as I know it, and hopefully that we can share our experiences as individuals, be it white, black, Asian, Latino, Indian, who, or whatever you are. You meet people where they are. But y'all go do the research and talk about that brother that they found down there hanging down there in Mississippi, y'all. Let's talk about it. Even the dean for the school understood that him speaking on it, he wasn't qualified. He said, I know I'm weak in this area for speaking on this because I am a white man. And that these images of this black kid being hung are not something that I accurately can speak on, ladies and gentlemen. He talked about that. You see? So if you don't feel the same way about that young man hanging down there in Mississippi, you can't expect us to feel no way about Charlie Kirk. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. So, like I said, once again, right? We can't have it one way and not have it the other way. And so they're asking us to feel some kind of way about something, about somebody who talked down to us, who degraded us as African Americans, who said that our fight and our plight and all of the blood, sweat, and tears that was shed on our behalf ain't shit. Right? Now, they say, well, it's some left, right. No, no left radical right. No, none of that. We're talking about humans, decency, respect, class, right? And everybody here being American and understanding where that person stands. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. So like I said, you can't say what you want to say now for fear that, you're going to lose your job. Somebody going to dox you. They're going to take you and put you up there and make you, come on, man, you got to be kidding me. You know what I mean? And like I said, at the end of the day, I know where that leads. Now I'm not going to say it, but I know where it leads. So like I said, as we're sitting here today, go do the research. They ain't saying nothing about that brother that was found hung down there in Mississippi. Right? They ain't getting no coverage on that. And understand the person who what they wanted it to be from the guy Tyler Robinson, what they wanted it to be, it wasn't. I understand that it wasn't. It wasn't this leftist. It was a young white man who came from a predominantly Republican, from what his grandmother said, not from what I'm saying. His grandmother said it. From a predominantly Republican family who basically were MAGA, right? That's what his grandmother said. And so, but Tyler Robinson just happened to be a young man who's gay, right? And like I said, I have no problem with that. But once again, I'm going to take you back to it again. This is why Tyler Robinson did what he did. It didn't have anything to do with politics. He felt like that Charlie Kirk was speaking on him or speaking to him, and Charlie Kirk not knowing. Like I say, may Charlie Kirk rest in peace. You know what I mean? He did not deserve to be shot. Point blank, period. Full stop. Right? But if we gonna have remorse, we gonna have remorse for human beings, or we gonna have remorse for that brother down there that was hung down there in Mississippi. We gonna have that same kind of love, that same kind of respect. We got to. Like I said, once again, we gonna have that same kind of dedication. Yup. You got to make, because I don't hear the mainstream media talking about it. I just don't. So now, like I said before, Tyler Robinson being a young man who was gay. Charlie Kirk not knowing that the young man was gay, right? When Charlie Kirk would say certain things, and I can understand why Tyler Robinson would be triggered. Because he may have been living, I don't know this, he may have been living a life on the down low, right? And he felt as though when Charlie Kirk would say certain things about the LGBT community, he felt that. He felt some kind of way. And how I know that, ladies and gentlemen, because he said it right here. The roommate asked him why. Robinson said, "Why did I do it?" The roommate says yes, right? Robinson said, "I had enough of his hatred." His hatred for what? He talked about the LGBT community. He said some hate can't be negotiated out of, right? And went right back. He said, "If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence, going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about it, them finding it on Fox." And he was looking at Fox News, ladies and gentlemen, to see what was going on. This is how we know, right? So once again, you have to think for yourself. They put this out. I guarantee you this is the same letter that they're going to be using in court to convict him. They're going to use this same very letter that he's saying about the hatred that he's claiming that Charlie Kirk was, that he was tired of, right? They're going to use this same letter right here to try to convict him, ladies and gentlemen. So what they're saying is, we want you to believe the part where he says, listen to this. We want you to believe the part where he says, when the roommate asked him, he said, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Robinson says, "I am. I'm sorry." They're going to tell you that that's an admission of him doing it, and he should be convicted of the death penalty. Like I said, Tyler Robinson has to answer for the actions that he committed, right? From that perspective. But then on the same token, they want you to say, no, you pay attention to that part. But if you go down to the next paragraph and you say the roommate says why, Robinson said, "Why I did it?" And the roommate says, "Yeah." He said, what Robinson say? "I had enough of his hatred." Some hate can't be negotiated out. And what is he talking about? Hatred of what, ladies and gentlemen? Hatred of the LGBT community, in which Tyler Robinson was a part of, unbeknownst to Charlie Kirk. He was basically, it seems like to me that Tyler Robinson was triggered. And he said, "You know what? I had enough of his hatred." Because they didn't know each other personally. So he couldn't have hated him personally. So what did he hate? He hated about him. He said, and we know now that, yeah, Tyler Robinson was gay. But we also know, because two things can be true at the same time. Yeah, he can be gay. I don't know if his roommate or whatever was transitioning or none of those things, right? This is what they pushed out. But let's be clear. We don't know if he's transitioning or not. But what does it say at the top of the what's the name? Look, what does it say? It says the roommate. Police interviewed Robinson's roommate, a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. So as we know it of right now, he is a biological male. And the reason why they put that on there is because the media was saying that he was somehow transitioning, or he had an operation, or he had female genital parts, and so on and so forth, right? They put that on there because, once again, to clarify, no, he was a biological, and they said biological male, point blank, period. But like I said, once again, when you deal with the facts, this is what it is. But they took Jimmy Kimmel off the air. You know what I mean? And so you got to ask yourself the question, is ABC and free speech done? Can you not say what you want no more? Right? Because listen, and this is the big hypocrisy of it all. Because when Charlie Kirk was out here saying what he wanted to say, everybody thought it was cool. When he was saying that, this 1964 Civil Rights Act was a bad idea, right? When he was claiming that, black women were stealing white people's position because affirmative action, that all of that was cool, right? When he was claiming, black fathers, and why are African Americans in prison and they less of the population? And a lot of the things that he was saying was simply not true. And then when challenged on it, right? He was like, well, so I'm right. And this is why I'm right. Like, huh? And like I said, and those sound bites would then be echoed across the echo chamber. And people who felt that way, who felt the same way or whatever they were calling themselves. I don't know what they called themselves. Like I said, he had his own organization. And let me be clear. All white people don't feel the way that Charlie Kirk felt. Point blank, period. So, let's not couple this in with, like I said, each individual is an individual and to be judged based on their content of their character, right? If you treat me cool, I'm going to treat you cool. You treat me with respect, I'm going to treat you with respect, right? It's just that simple. But like I said, when Charlie Kirk was out here saying what he was saying, up until the day that situation had happened, nobody was saying nothing. Everybody thought it was cool. Even the people who now say that everybody is making fun of him and nobody's making, like I said, I know I haven't. I don't think anything's funny about it. I think it's actually sad. It's a tragedy. Once again, that one can't see and have the one thing that Charlie Kirk said that he didn't have any empathy. He said, I don't have any empathy. I think they made that word up. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. They made the word empathy up because Charlie Kirk said so? Oh, wow. This word has been around for 100 years. Now, all of a sudden, Charlie Kirk come along in 2025 and said, I hate empathy. To be honest, I think they made the word up. What? Because he said so. Oh, okay. Right. Once again, nobody said anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, I had to do this video. You say, B Money said there's even a gay black guy that's MAGA. Like I said, people can support whatever political affiliation they want to. That doesn't, nobody cares. Who cares about that? Like I said, a lot of people, Republican or Democrat, vote against their own best interests for whatever reason they feel like they want to do it. Right? Simple. And that's what they do. But like I said, when people grab onto other people's ideology, you got to remember, a lot of these people are not in Donald Trump's tax bracket, right? They don't have the kind of money and influence and things that he had. They got new golf courses in Dubai and buildings in Dubai and Qatar, and they building up their portfolio again. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, And another thing, I tripped off of this because you didn't hear anything about Lisa Cook, who was the Fed governor, right? They had the Fed meeting today and they lowered interest rates 1/4 point. Listen, I want you to listen to this. She won her appeals case, right? You didn't hear nothing about that. You didn't hear nothing about them taking it no further or anything other than that. There were other people in Donald Trump's own administration who had the same thing as far as a main house and a vacation property, right? They didn't call that fraud. They didn't call that fraud. The only person that's been convicted of fraud that I know and out of the conversation that was going on was Donald Trump and his Trump organization. That's a fact. So it's crazy to me. I'm like, what the hell? What are we doing? What are we thinking? And that's not, like I said, and you got to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be real clear. Because I got a partner who was a mailman, and he brung this up to me, and he said, yeah, Delray, he said, me as a mailman, he said, I couldn't have a felony, right? He said, I couldn't have a felony and deliver the mail. I'm like, what? He's like, no. He said, as being in a government job, right? He said, I couldn't have a felony and deliver the mail. I was like, no. He said, but guess what? He said, you can have 34 felonies and be president. I was like, wow. I never thought of it that way. You know what I'm saying? And so when people are out here calling people names, trying to accuse people of things that are merely allegations and not even criminal charges, you got to be careful of what you're listening to, man. You know what I mean? You got to explain to your kids, you know, like I said, this is white, black, Asian, Latino, whoever it may be, right? You got to explain to your kids, hey, look, man, we here together. We're here together. You know what I mean? And this is the United States of America. Don't let them divide you. And a lot of the people that are doing the things that they're doing, you know, it's 4 years. It's 4 years, and then, you know, somebody new come into office, somebody else get voted into office. And like I said, it was Barack, it was Joe Biden, it was Trump, it's Trump again, you know what I mean? So one has to be careful about what they side and what they do. Like I said, you got to make sure that when you get in the government, somebody that really truly cares about the people and cares about America is going to get up there and say, hey, you know what? The political violence and the rhetoric and all of that needs to be toned down a bit. But that ain't where we living in, ladies and gentlemen. And I can understand why Trump mad a little bit. I understand. They tried to assassinate. They tried to take his life. And I get that. And I understand. It's kind of like, and I go to Tupac. When Tupac got shot in New York, he came back a different person. He was a different person. And he didn't give a fuck. And so I can understand what Trump did, some of what he feels. I can't really say I understand how he feels, but like I said, I understand that he could be upset and he could want revenge and he could want, a retribution. Yeah. That's to be understood too. But once again, it's being able to weigh out and say, hey, you know what? The American people didn't do anything. You got the position, you back in office, you can do all of the things, and you can make this situation a better situation. You know what I mean? And that's it. I get it though. All aspects of it. You know what I mean? Two things can be true at the same time, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, but as to the situation with Jimmy Kimmel, being taken off the air, over just basically a remark that he made in regards to his opinion, you know what I mean? We got to ask ourselves, hold on, man, but we can't say nothing no more, right? You got to be scared? No, man, that's crazy, right? That's called living on your knees. You know what I mean? That's living on your knees. That can't happen, right? You got to be able to be up and stand up and be a man and be counted as a man. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I had to bring this to you guys. You know what I mean? Yeah, like I say, Marcos say he's going to cancel his Disney subscription. Yeah, this is crazy. Like, whether it's Disneyland, whether it's the Black Panther movie they got coming up, all of those things, it calls into question. You know what I mean? We know that they do most of what they do in regards to what goes on about money. But once again, you got to ask yourself, hold on, man, if the man can't crack a joke and they take him off the air, like, hold on, really? But this is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Anna Little said Jimmy shouldn't have been taken off the air. Like I said, I agree. If you can't, like I said, if people are that much in their feelings, right? When Charlie Kirk called George Floyd a scumbag, George Floyd ain't do nothing to Charlie Kirk. Those were dog whistles he was blowing. Those were dog whistles. We get it. They say they were looking for ways that the police officer that had the knee on his neck, so basically what they were saying was, and Charlie Kirk was trying to argue, well, George Floyd didn't die from the knee on his neck. He died from a drug overdose. Are you kidding me? So you mean to tell me prior to him having the knee on his neck, he was on his way out? The man said he couldn't breathe. But once again, this is the lack of empathy that Charlie Kirk had for George Floyd, y'all. George Floyd didn't know Charlie Kirk. Listen to me. George Floyd didn't know Charlie Kirk like Tyler Robinson didn't know Charlie Kirk. Think about that. I need you to think about that for a minute, man. God is present. Listen, Charlie Kirk, after George Floyd's death, said George Floyd was a scumbag. Charlie Kirk didn't know George Floyd. George Floyd didn't do nothing to Charlie Kirk. Right? But and he was talking bad about George Floyd after his death. Listen. Charlie Kirk was also talking about the gay and lesbian community in which Tyler Robinson was a part of. Charlie Kirk didn't know Tyler Robinson either until that fateful day. You get it? You get it? So, God is present, man. You can't play with people like that. You can't throw out all of this hate and this all for nothing. Like, what did George Floyd do to Charlie Kirk? What did he do to him? Nothing. And like I said, everybody can have their opinion, including Charlie Kirk, right? And like I said, I'll say it again, Charlie Kirk didn't deserve to die. And neither did George Floyd. You see what I'm saying? And neither did George Floyd. But if you felt some way, somehow, that George Floyd deserved to die for something that started over a counterfeit $20 bill in a liquor store, okay, then God watching you too. Because I don't feel like Charlie Kirk should have died under no circumstances. No matter some of the stuff he was saying, I don't agree. Like I said, what he said about George, I don't agree with it, but I don't feel like he should have died. No, I don't. But that ain't how some of them feel about you. You see, because they hung us from trees, and the brother that they just found there in Mississippi, right? They did that to us, right? Just for the color of our skin. Huh? What happened to Emmett Till? And listen, the white lady that did the thing to Emmett Till, what did she do? She came out later in life and said, guess what? I lied. She lied on Emmett Till. But they killed Emmett Till and found him at the bottom of a river, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Think about it. You got to think about that for a minute. That wasn't because Emmett Till did anything wrong. That was because a white woman lied on him. She lied on him. Right? That's why they call that statement little white lies, right? You see what I'm saying? When you think about the big picture. The big picture. But like I said, all white people don't feel the same as people who are racist. And people, you know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. But like I said, for what happened to Charlie Kirk, it shouldn't have happened. Just like it shouldn't have happened to Emmett Till. Just like it shouldn't have happened to George Floyd. And then you got this, like I said, once again, I don't know what you call Charleston White. I don't even know what to call him. And I told y'all that when I made the video, right? When he was speaking out not too long ago, Charleston White, right? Y'all thought that Charleston White was some kind of truth teller. He's not that guy. Charleston White is ignorant as they come. And the stuff that he said about Charlie Kirk was wrong. Point blank, period. You know what I mean? You know, and so when we deal with that, and I get it, because we live in such a shock jock type of, world where people just saying all in this old crazy ass stuff. You know what I mean? Oh, God. He's sitting there smoking weed and all of that and laughing and like, yeah, yeah. And like, dude, what are you talking about, man? Charleston White doesn't represent black folk. Charleston White represents the worst of us, not the best of us. Really, real talk, ladies and gentlemen. Right? That shit sets you back. That stuff, that what he doing, that sets you back. That's egotistical narcissist behavior in regards to how he feels about what y'all ask me how I feel about, Charlie Kirk. Very irresponsible. And not a representation of the majority of people once again. But like I said, when people say things and do things like that, like I said once again, the things that Charleston White said about New York and Jay-Z and all of the LL Cool J, he's not a represent. He's been eating off our culture, the hip hop culture, since day one. Since day one, talking about the rappers and the hip hop and it ain't this and this, that, and the other, as if he had a remedy to what's been feeding the culture, taking care of people, removing people out of the ghetto, giving people jobs, people like Jay-Z, people like, I'm gonna go Dame Dash, in the beginning years, people like, Suge Knight, though they all had their own falls and mishaps, right? Jay Prince, all of these people who gave jobs and created careers and made people millionaires, things like that, so that other people can work. Charleston White doesn't represent none of that. He can't speak on that and articulate that and then turn around and say some of the most ignorant, vile stuff about somebody who passed away. Like I said, there's a way to deal with that. I understand where Charleston White wants to come from, but he's not a representation of us because, like I said, he said he hated, and I'm gonna say it like this. He said he hated niggas, and then now he's saying, I hate white folk too. So my be damn if he don't hate himself. So once again, this is what we dealing with. When we are made to think that the lowest of us, right, is somehow the best we can do as African Americans. Point blank, period. So like I said, Jimmy Kimmel has been taken off the air. And I did this video to, like I said, to speak the truth about the situation and why the young man Tyler Robinson did what he did. We cannot look past his letter and the communications that he had with his gay lover and roommate. We can't look past that. Anything other than what that letter is saying right now until Tyler Robinson speak is speculation. That's why I dealt strictly with that letter. And he said he got tired of what? Once again, I'm going to go back there one more time. What did he say? What did he say? He asked him, what? He said, you weren't, his roommate said, you weren't the one that did it, right? Robinson says, I'm sorry. I am. I'm sorry. So he confesses to it in this communication, right? And the roommate said, I thought they caught the person. He said, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude and then interrogated someone in similar clothing. How does Tyler Robinson know this? He's sitting there watching on his phone Fox News. And he said it. He said it in the letter that he was watching Fox News and that he was hoping that, some of the stuff that he had wrote, the memes that he had wrote, didn't come up on Fox News. He said he thought that he'd faint or fall out if he seen that come across Fox News, ladies and gentlemen. He knew right where to watch. Right? Right? He said, he basically said, I'm trying to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after. But most of the side of town is already locked down. But the cold part about it is, why did he do it? Ladies and gentlemen, they're trying to tell you some other reason other than the actual reason that's in his communication with the roommate that they want to believe everything that he says. But when we go into the actual dialogue and the actual question, he asks him. The roommate says, why? And they're trying to give you 15 other reasons. It's a left radical right and it's this, that, and the other. Why do they need it to be that so much? It's not that. It's right here. Why? Robinson says what? Why did I do it? And the roommate says, yeah. The very question that everybody wants answered. And Robinson says what? In reference to why he shot Charlie Kirk. I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. Ladies and gentlemen. The hate of what? The hate that Charlie Kirk didn't know that was hurting or offending Tyler Robinson. And that was the hate against people who are similar and are gay like Robinson is. And we've heard all of the stuff that Charlie Kirk had said about the gay community. That's what Haiti talking about, y'all. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. There's nothing else political in here. And as a matter of fact, let me take you to the second part of the letter right here. Right? See, the only thing left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? Listen, he said, remember how I was engraving bullets? He said the fucking messages are mostly big memes. Nothing political. He says what they meant right here. Most of the fucking letters were big memes. If I see notices bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke. I'm sorry, I said he might faint. He said I might have a stroke. All right, I'm going to leave it. That really fucking sucks. What he said he's going to leave. He said he's going to leave the rifle. And he said that really fucking sucks. That he has to leave the rifle. He said, judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. Right? I don't know. Did you see that? Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. Meaning, I guess he's saying that it worked well, which is, I think is crazy, like I said, but this is his words, ladies and gentlemen. He said nothing about nothing politics, no nothing, right? He said, I think that was a $2,000 scope, the scope on the gun, right? Robinson asked his roommate, delete this exchange. Robinson, my dad wants a photo of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds release a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He's calling me, not answering. Ladies and gentlemen, think for yourself. Like I said, once again, it's a tragic situation that Charlie Kirk got murdered. It's a tragic situation that Tyler Robinson felt like he was hurt, and somehow the things that Charlie Kirk was saying directly affected him. I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Somebody could be saying something, and you could be a part of that community or part of something that relates to something like that, and it could feel like they talking to you. Right? Yeah, that's what it was. Wasn't no political, wasn't nothing about no ideology or none of those things. A lot of times it's just the smallest thing, or like I said, part of something that's being said, and somebody feel like, somebody saying something to them, or they hating them, and I guess the pulpit that Charlie Kirk had, right, and saying what he said in regards to that. And like I said, it was in Charlie Kirk's right to say everything he was saying. Freedom of speech, the First Amendment, right here. So now, thinking about that, and I summed this up with that. Charlie Kirk was saying everything that he was saying, and when he was saying it, nobody was saying nothing. Donald Trump wasn't saying nothing. His administration wasn't saying nothing. The SEC wasn't saying nothing. Right? The FTC wasn't saying nothing. It was all good until this situation happened. And now all of a sudden, I think, they feel like, well, if he, no. Like I said, once again, they assassinated Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, right? Medgar Evers, all of those people. You understand what I'm saying? So when you think about the big picture, right? Here we are. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I appreciate your time. I hope that, we would learn to think for ourselves, take the information, and not let one side or the other tell you what to think, how to think, because ultimately you're going to have to live with the decisions that you make. Each and every one of us are going to have to live with the decisions that we make as individuals, as human beings, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, like who said that? Nicodemus. Nicodemus said MLK had 4 kids and a wife as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the hate back then was real. You know what I mean? You know what Martin Luther King was going up against, like I said, trying to, bring everybody together. It's one thing to have a solidarity speech, and trying to bring us together, but it's another thing to be divisive. You know what I mean? And trying to say, well, this person over here versus over here versus over here. And this is what it is and this is what it isn't. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's sad, man. It's really sad, but people must remember, right? What goes up comes down. The same people that you see going up, you will see them coming down if you're lucky. Right? Nobody, listen, look, it said nobody is bigger than the program. Right? And the program been running for what? 300 some years. United States been really actively being the United States of America. It's still a work in progress. Right? And like I said, ultimately, we are the people. We are in control of how this thing goes. Like I said, 4 years. It was George W. Bush, Barack Obama. Like I said, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Donald Trump again. Like I said, all of this changed. And the crazy part about all of this is just like I seen when Barack Obama and Donald Trump was sitting next to each other at Jimmy Carter's funeral, right? If that's not a reminder of the finality of whatever this is, don't care how much money you got, how much power you thought you had. Death is the great equalizer. It's the great equalizer. So, we'll live this out, and hopefully, like I said, we'll come to some kind of healing as a nation. If not, then hey, what's in the book, like Bob Marley said, it'll have to be fulfilled. Your boy Delray, ladies and gentlemen, straight gang.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.